Maya thought it was just another long shift at the cafe until she saw an elderly man digging through his pockets, ashamed he couldn't afford a simple drink. Out of pity, she paid for him herself, never imagining that within days, the same poor old man would summon her to his office and reveal that he secretly owned the very cafe she worked in. That single cup of coffee would change her life forever. Before I take you into Maya's unbelievable story, I want to ask you, what would you do if the person you quietly helped one day suddenly revealed they owned everything around you, including your job? Let me know in the comments, and also tell me which city and country you're watching from, so I can thank you personally. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true stories like this. It was a chilly evening in downtown Chicago, and the cafe buzzed with its usual rhythm, clinking cups, the hiss of steaming milk, and the hum of tired customers. Maya, a hard-working waitress juggling bills and overdue rent, moved quickly between tables, masking her exhaustion with a smile. To her, this cafe was just a job, a place where she earned enough to scrape by. But on this particular night, something unusual caught her eye. At the far end of the counter sat an elderly man in a worn-out coat, his hands trembling as he searched his pockets. He looked embarrassed, almost invisible to everyone else. Customers turned away. The barista rolled his eyes, but Maya's heart ached. She walked over, quietly slid a few dollars from her own tips across the counter and said, "Don't worry, sir. This one's on me." She didn't know it yet, but this small act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would soon flip her entire world upside down. The old man looked up slowly, his eyes watery but sharp, as if they carried decades of untold stories. For a moment, he just stared at Maya, stunned that someone had noticed him at all. Most people walked past him without so much as a glance, but here she was, offering him dignity with nothing more than a cup of coffee. "Thank you, miss," he said softly, his voice cracked with age but steady enough to leave an impression. "You didn't have to do that," Maya smiled, brushing it off. "It's just coffee," she said. "Everyone deserves at least that much." But as she turned away to tend to other customers, she could feel his eyes following her, almost studying her every move. There was something unsettling about it, not creepy but intentional, like he was measuring more than just her kindness. He sipped the coffee slowly, savoring it in a way that made Maya pause. Most customers gulped theirs down, without a thought, but this man held the cup with both hands, as though it were priceless. Every sip seemed ceremonial, deliberate, almost like he hadn't had something so warm and comforting in years. Or perhaps like he valued it for reasons she couldn't yet understand. When she came back to check on him, he asked quietly, "How long have you been working here, child?" Maya shrugged. "About 2 years. It pays the bills, barely." His lips curved into a faint smile. "Barely is better than nothing, and yet you still gave away what little you had." He tapped the table with a frail finger. "Kindness like that doesn't go unnoticed." Before Maya could reply, a group of impatient customers waved her over, pulling her back into the rush of orders and trays. By the time she looked back, the old man had finished his coffee and left. But oddly, he hadn't left through the front door. At least, not that she had seen. The cup sat empty, perfectly aligned with the edge of the table, as though placed there with precision. She shook it off. People came and went all the time. Maybe she just hadn't noticed. But a strange feeling lingered in her chest, like she had been part of something that wasn't over yet. That night, as she counted her tips, she realized the stack seemed heavier than usual. Confused, she recounted, and found an extra $50 bill neatly folded between the smaller notes. She was certain she hadn't received it from any customer she'd served. For a moment, her heart raced. Could it have been the old man? Maya tucked the bill into her apron, unsettled. Whoever he was, he hadn't just accepted her kindness, he had quietly returned it in a way that felt more like a test than a gift. And somewhere deep inside, Maya sensed this was only the beginning. The next day at the cafe, Maya's shift began as usual, tying her apron, wiping down the counter, and bracing herself for the endless orders that would pour in. But it wasn't long before her co-worker Jenna leaned against the espresso machine with a smirk. "So," Jenna said loud enough for everyone to hear, "our little charity worker bought a coffee for that raggedy old man last night. You sure know how to pick your investments, Maya," the barista chuckled, chiming in. "Careful, Maya, keep handing out freebies and you'll be broke before payday." Maya forced a laugh, not wanting to spark conflict. But deep down, their words stung. She hadn't done it for recognition. It was a simple act of kindness, nothing more. Why was that so hard for them to understand? Her manager, Mr. Reynolds, overheard and walked over, his face stern. He was a man obsessed with rules, punctuality, and above all, profit. "Maya," he said, adjusting his tie, "I know your heart was in the right place, but we can't afford to be handing out free drinks. This is a business, not a charity. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Maya muttered, lowering her eyes. She didn't argue, but something in her chest burned. Was compassion really such a crime here? Still, she nodded and got back to work, serving. And customer after customer, trying to push the memory of the old man from her mind. But then, it happened again. Around mid-afternoon, as she cleaned a table by the window, she noticed something odd. A folded napkin sat neatly in the corner, untouched, and out of place. She picked it up and froze. Inside was a small note written in precise, elegant handwriting. "Thank you again. J." No one had seen who left it. No customer sitting nearby claimed it, and the only initial was J. Maya's hands trembled as she tucked the napkin into her pocket. Was it from him? But how? And why? The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She caught herself glancing at the door every time it opened, half expecting the old man to walk in again. But he didn't. Still, the cafe seemed different, as if he had left a piece of himself behind. That evening, as she was closing up, she noticed something that made her heart race. The cafe's front window reflected the street outside, and in the dim light, she swore she saw him, the same old man, standing across the street under a lamppost, watching quietly. By the time she spun around to look directly, he was gone. The next day, Maya came in earlier than usual. Something told her she had to be there. The morning rush came and went, but around 11 the door creaked open. And there he was, the old man in the same worn-out coat, leaning on a cane. This time, Maya approached him before he could even sit down. "Good morning," she greeted warmly. The usual, his lips curved into the faintest smile. "You remembered." She nodded, preparing his coffee, this time refusing to let him see her nervousness. When she set the cup in front of him, he didn't drink immediately. Instead, he tapped the table with his knuckles, studying her with that same penetrating gaze. "You know," he said slowly, "most people here don't look twice at me. They see the clothes, the cane, the age, and they turn away. But you didn't. You see more than others do." Maya felt her cheeks flush. She had no idea what to say. Before she could respond, Jenna walked past with a tray and muttered just loud enough, "There's her boyfriend again." The barista snickered. The old man's eyes flicked toward them, sharp and unamused, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned back to Maya. "Don't let them shame you for kindness. Often the ones who laugh the loudest have the least to give." And with that, he sipped his coffee, his expression unreadable. Maya stood there, frozen, wondering, how could a man who seemed so poor speak with the authority of someone used to being obeyed? Who exactly was he? One thing was clear. This wasn't just about coffee anymore. The following week unfolded like any other, yet Maya couldn't shake the old man from her thoughts. Every shift, she found herself scanning the crowd, half expecting his quiet figure to appear. And each time he did, something about him unsettled her. A contradiction she couldn't explain. His coat was frayed, but his shoes were polished. His hands trembled, but his eyes carried a calm authority that demanded respect. On Wednesday morning, he entered again, leaning on his cane. This time, however, instead of ordering at the counter, he beckoned Maya to sit across from him. She hesitated, glancing at the manager's office window, but curiosity won. She slid into the booth opposite him, clutching her notepad like a shield. "I'd like something a little different today," he said, voice steady despite its raspy undertone. "What's that?" Maya asked cautiously. "I want you to choose. Something for me. Something you think I'd enjoy. Surprise me." Maya blinked. Customers almost always knew exactly what they wanted, but the way he said it, like it was a test, made her pulse quicken. She studied him. He didn't look like the type to splurge, so she avoided the pricier lattes. Instead, she settled on a simple cappuccino with a hint of cinnamon. Warm, comforting, not extravagant, something she imagined he might like. When she placed the drink before him, he smiled faintly, lifting it to his lips. He sipped slowly, savoring. Then, with surprising sharpness, he asked, "Why this one?" Maya shifted nervously. "I thought it felt like something gentle, a little warmth for the cold outside. Not too much, not too little, just right." For a long moment he said nothing, only watching her. Finally, he set the cup down and leaned back. "Most people judge by appearances. They would have picked the cheapest, thinking I couldn't afford better, or the most expensive, thinking it would impress me. You chose balance, that's rare." His words sent a strange chill through her. Before she could ask what he meant, Jenna walked by again, rolling her eyes. "Seriously, Maya? Playing waitress and therapist now?" Maya ignored her, but the old man's expression darkened briefly before softening again. He reached into his pocket, pulling out something small and placing it on the table. A silver coin, old yet gleaming. "Keep it," he said simply. Maya frowned, picking it up. "What is this?" "A token, not payment. Gratitude." His eyes glimmered with something unreadable. "One day it might be worth more than you think." Confused, Maya slipped the coin into her apron pocket. It felt heavier than it should. That evening, as she counted her tips, she couldn't stop staring at it. It wasn't like any coin she'd seen before. Intricate engravings wrapped around its edges, almost regal. Was it antique, valuable, or just a strange trinket? Her thoughts were interrupted when Mr. Reynolds called her into his office. His face was tight with irritation. "Maya, I've had complaints. Customers say you spend too much time with that old man instead of attending to others. This is your final warning. We can't afford distractions." Maya's chest tightened. She needed this job. Rent was due in 2 weeks. But something inside her resisted the idea of walking away from the old man. He wasn't just another customer anymore. The next day he returned again, and this time his request was even stranger. "I need you to do me a favor," he said quietly, sliding an envelope across the table. Maya's heart skipped. "What kind of favor?" "Nothing dangerous," he assured her, though his tone carried weight. "Deliver this to the bank on the corner. Hand it directly to the branch manager. Don't open it. Don't ask questions. Can you do that?" She stared at the envelope. It was sealed with a wax stamp, elegant and old-fashioned. Something about it felt important. But why her? Why trust a waitress with something like this? Her instinct screamed caution, yet something deeper urged her to nod. "All right," she whispered. "I'll do it." And with that decision, Maya stepped unknowingly into a world she never imagined, A world where a single favor for a poor old man would shatter everything she thought she knew. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Maya carried it tucked against her chest as she pushed through the icy Chicago wind, her apron still tied around her waist from her morning shift. Her instincts whispered, this wasn't normal. Why would a man who couldn't even afford coffee trust her with something that looked so official? The bank loomed ahead, its glass doors polished and intimidating. She hesitated before stepping inside, wondering if she should just walk away. But her curiosity and a strange loyalty to the old man pushed her forward. "Good morning," said the receptionist politely. "How can I help you?" Maya held up the envelope, her palms sweating. I was told to deliver this directly to the branch manager." The receptionist raised a brow but nodded, picking up the phone. Moments later, a tall man in a sharp navy suit appeared. His presence filled the room, confident, commanding. His name tag read, "Mr. Callahan, branch manager." "You have something for me?" he asked, his voice clipped. Maya handed him the envelope. He inspected the wax seal closely, then looked back at her with sudden intensity. "Where did you get this?" Her mouth went dry. "From a customer at the cafe. An older man. He just asked me to bring it to you." Callahan's eyes narrowed. He broke the seal with deliberate care and pulled out several sheets of paper. As his eyes scanned the first page, his expression shifted from irritation to shock. He blinked rapidly, then read more carefully, flipping through the contents twice, as though making sure he wasn't hallucinating. Finally, he looked up at Maya, his voice lower now, almost reverent. "Do you know who that man is?" Maya shook her head quickly. "No, he's just a regular at the cafe, struggles to pay for coffee, that's all." Callahan chuckled softly, but it wasn't amusement, it was disbelief. "That man is no ordinary customer. These documents give him access to accounts, investments worth more than most people could dream of. If this is authentic, and I have no reason to doubt it, he isn't poor at all." Maya's pulse raced. She must have misheard. "What are you saying? He's rich?" "Rich?" Callahan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "He could buy this bank outright if he wanted. The man you're describing is a billionaire." The words struck her like thunder. Billionaire? It made no sense. His frayed coat, his trembling hands, the way he counted pennies for coffee, it all clashed with the idea of unimaginable wealth. "But why would he come to our cafe looking like that?" Maya whispered. Callahan gave her a knowing look. "Some wealthy men prefer to hide in plain sight. It protects them, lets them see the world without masks." He slid the envelope back into its folder and placed it carefully in his safe. Then he fixed Maya with an intense stare. "Listen to me. You've been trusted with something few people ever get near. Do not take this lightly. If he gave this to you, it means he's watching you closely." Maya's legs felt weak as she left the bank. The wind outside seemed colder now, sharper. A billionaire. The man she had pitied, the man she had bought coffee for, the man her co-workers mocked. He was wealthier than the entire cafe combined. That night, Maya lay awake, the silver coin he had given her earlier burning in her palm. Was it a clue? A test? Everything about him felt like a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. The following day, when he walked into the cafe again, she could barely meet his eyes. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but the weight of his secret pressed against her chest. Before she could speak, he gave her a small nod, as though he already knew she had delivered the envelope safely. "Thank you, Maya," he said quietly. "Few would have done what you did without asking questions. That tells me more about you than you realize." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to scream, "Why me? Why trust me? Who are you really?" But something in his calm smile silenced her. Instead, he reached into his coat and placed another object on the table. This time, it wasn't a coin. It was a key. Old, ornate, with an engraving she couldn't decipher. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. His eyes twinkled with a mystery that sent shivers through her. "The beginning of an answer," he replied, and just like that, Maya realized she was being pulled deeper into his secret world, one step at a time. Maya held the key as if it were made of glass. Its weight was solid, yet its meaning was elusive. She turned it over in her hand again and again, noting the strange crest engraved on its head, a shield crossed with two wings, and beneath it, letters she couldn't quite read. "What does it open?" she asked nervously. The old man only smiled faintly. "When the time is right, you'll know. Until then, keep it safe. You'll need it more than you think." Maya wanted to push him for answers, but his expression warned her against it. Something about his calm silence made her feel that rushing would only ruin whatever he had planned. That evening, curiosity gnawed at her. She pulled out her phone, searched for the crest, and scrolled furiously through images. At last, she froze. There it was, the same symbol. Not from any ordinary place, but tied to a private foundation known for funding massive global charities, universities and hospitals. A foundation whispered to be backed by one of the world's wealthiest men. Maya's chest tightened. Could the man at her cafe truly be the same person behind it? She clicked deeper, finding news articles. Reporters speculated about the billionaire's whereabouts, how he often disappeared from public view for years, living among ordinary people to observe life outside the gilded cage of wealth. The resemblance between the blurred paparazzi photo and her cafe customer was undeniable. Still, why her? Why trust her, a waitress struggling to cover rent, with his secrets? The next morning, Maya tucked the key safely into her apron pocket before heading to work. Hours into her shift, the old man arrived as usual, sitting at his corner table. This time, when she brought his coffee, she dared to sit across from him. "I know who you are," she whispered, her heart racing. He looked at her without surprise. "Do you?" "You're not just some old man," Maya continued, her voice unsteady. "You're connected to that foundation. You're the billionaire everyone's been speculating about." He chuckled softly, but his eyes remained serious. "Titles and wealth don't define who I am, but yes, I see you've been paying attention, and that's exactly why I gave you the key." Maya clutched it tighter. "But why me? Out of all the people, why trust a waitress with something like this?" His gaze softened. "Because when I couldn't pay for coffee, you didn't hesitate. You gave freely, with no expectation. That kind of kindness is rare. Money can buy almost anything, Maya, but it cannot buy character. And character is the only thing I value. In people." Maya swallowed hard. The weight of his words sank deep into her chest. Then he leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Tomorrow, go to the old library on Jefferson Street. The basement door has a lock with that crest. Use the key. What you find there will explain everything." Her pulse skyrocketed. A secret mission, a locked basement. It sounded like something out of a thriller movie. The next evening, curiosity overcame fear. Maya found herself standing in front of the abandoned library, its windows covered in dust. The doors chained. She circled the building until she found the basement entrance. Her hands shook as she slid the key into the lock. With a heavy click, it turned. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden chamber lit with faint golden light. Inside were shelves stacked with leather-bound books, binders and crates marked with the same crest, and at the center, a safe. She stepped closer, her heart hammering, and saw a note taped to it, written in careful script. "Maya, this is yours. To open. Trust yourself." Her hands trembled as she spun the dial, unsure how she even knew the combination, until her fingers seemed to move on their own, guided by instinct. The safe door swung open, revealing stacks of documents, property deeds, bank statements, and a will. Her breath caught. The billionaire hadn't just trusted her with a key. He was naming her as heir to a fortune she couldn't even comprehend. Maya stumbled backward, shaking her head in disbelief. No, this can't be real, but the documents were undeniable. One by one, she skimmed the pages, her eyes blurring as she read her own name printed across them. Beneficiary, successor, trustee. Her entire body trembled. Why would he choose her that night? She couldn't sleep. She clutched the will against her chest, torn between excitement and fear. By morning, she had resolved to confront him directly. When she arrived at the cafe, he was already seated, as if waiting for her. She slid into the booth, dropping the papers on the table. "What is this?" she demanded. "Why are you giving me everything? This doesn't make sense." He sipped his coffee calmly. "Because I needed to know if someone like you existed. Someone who would help a man with nothing, not knowing he had everything." Maya shook her head. "But I don't deserve this. I'm just me. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect." "That's exactly why you deserve it," he replied, his voice firm. "You're real, not driven by greed or status. When I leave this world, I don't want my legacy in the hands of people who see only numbers. I want it in the hands of someone who sees people." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. The weight of responsibility was crushing, yet his faith in her felt like a flame igniting inside. Then his tone shifted, darker, heavier. "But understand, this isn't a gift, it's a test. With this inheritance comes enemies, people who will stop at nothing to take it from you. If you accept, your life will never be the same." A chill ran down her spine. She thought of her co-workers, her landlord, her ex who had left her broke and alone. If they discovered she was heir to a billionaire's empire, what would they do? Still, despite the fear, something in her heart whispered that this was meant to be. Maya met his gaze and nodded. "I'll do it. Whatever comes, I'll protect your legacy." The old man's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then, Maya, your real life begins now." And as he rose to leave, his cane tapping against the cafe floor, Maya knew her world had been split in two. The life she once lived, and the destiny she had just stepped into. Maya thought she could hide the truth, but secrets that big have a way of leaking out. It started small. A stranger loitered outside her apartment building late at night, pretending to smoke. Another time, a black SUV followed her from the cafe to the grocery store, only to speed off when she turned around. Then came the letter, slipped under her door without a stamp, without a name. "You don't deserve what you've been given. Step away before it's too late." Her chest tightened. Fear settled deep in her bones. Who could know? She hadn't told a soul, not even her closest friend at the cafe. The next morning she confronted the old man, whose real name she had finally discovered from the documents, Edward Harrington, a billionaire recluse whose foundation had quietly shaped lives across the globe. "Someone knows," Maya whispered, showing him the note with trembling fingers. "They're watching." "Me?" Edward's eyes hardened. For the first time, he looked less like a gentle grandfather and more like a man who had survived battles no ordinary person could imagine. "I warned you," he said gravely. "Wealth attracts vultures. I've kept my enemies at bay for decades, but once word spreads of my successor, they'll try to break you." Maya's voice cracked. "But why me? You could have chosen lawyers, advisors, anyone with experience. I'm just a waitress." Edward leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "Exactly. Because the people I trusted before tried to betray me. Power makes them blind. I needed someone outside the system. Someone pure." His words should have comforted her, but instead they tightened the noose of fear. 2 nights later, things escalated. Maya returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Heart pounding, she pushed it open. Inside, nothing was stolen, but everything had been touched. Her drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. Even her pillows slit open as though someone had been searching for something. On the mirror, written in red lipstick, were the words, "Give back what isn't yours." Maya collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. She dialed Edward immediately. "They're in my home," she sobbed. "Pack a bag," Edward instructed. "I'm sending someone to get you. Tonight." Within the hour, a tall, silent driver arrived in a dark car. He whisked her away to one of Edward's safe houses, a sprawling countryside estate with high walls and heavy gates. Yet even there, Maya couldn't shake the sense of eyes watching her, waiting for her to slip. At first, the safe house felt like protection, but slowly, Maya began noticing cracks in the walls of trust. The staff assigned to protect her often whispered when she passed. Their conversation stopped the moment she entered a room. Once, she caught one of them rifling through her handbag under the pretense of checking for bugs. Her instinct screamed, "Not everyone here is on my side." One evening, while exploring the study, she stumbled across a locked drawer. The key Edward had given her months earlier seemed to fit. She hesitated, then turned it. Inside was a file with her name on it. Heart racing, she pulled it out. The papers inside weren't what she expected. Not legal documents, not financial papers, but a detailed dossier on her life. Her childhood, her school records, her failed relationships, her medical history. Even her most private secrets, things she'd never told anyone, were typed neatly on the pages. She felt sick. Edward had known everything about her long before she ever bought him that coffee. A voice behind her made her jump. "Now you see." Maya spun around. It was one of the staff, a woman named Clara, who'd always been a little too friendly, a little too watchful. "What is this?" Maya demanded, holding up the file. Clara's smile didn't reach her eyes. "A test. You were never chosen by chance, Maya. He's been watching you for years. Grooming you." The words struck like lightning. "No, that's not true. He told me it was my kindness that—" Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you really think billionaires leave anything to chance? He's manipulated everything. Even the day you bought his coffee. He arranged it. He wanted to see if you'd pass." Maya's heart pounded. Doubt flooded her chest. Could it be? Had Edward orchestrated the very moment she thought was fate? Clara leaned in. "And now he's setting you up to take the fall. Do you know how many people want him gone? Once he dies, you'll be the target. You'll inherit his enemies, but not his protection." Maya staggered back, her mind spinning. Who was lying? Clara with her cold smile, or Edward with his carefully woven trust? Before she could answer, a gunshot shattered the silence. The sound echoed through the halls. Clara froze, eyes wide. Somewhere upstairs, voices shouted. Footsteps thundered. Maya clutched the file to her chest as the safe house erupted into chaos, and in that terrifying moment, one truth became clear. Whoever Edward Harrington really was, his secrets were far darker and far deadlier than she had ever imagined. Gunfire ripped through the quiet night, shattering the illusion of safety. Maya ducked behind the heavy oak desk, clutching the file against her chest. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as shouts echoed through the mansion. Clara's calm facade had vanished. Her eyes darted to the door, her body tense like a cornered animal. "Stay here," she hissed, pulling a sleek pistol from beneath her blazer. "You're armed," Maya whispered, horrified. Clara didn't answer. She slipped out, shutting the study door softly behind her. Maya's pulse thundered. She wanted to believe Edward had chosen her for kindness, for something pure, but Clara's words clawed at her brain. Manipulation, orchestration, grooming. Then came another sound, softer, more chilling than the gunshots. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. The doorknob twisted. Maya scrambled to her feet, backing away. The door creaked open. It wasn't Clara, it was Edward, but he didn't look frail anymore. No cane, no tremble in his hands. He moved with quiet authority, like a general stepping onto the battlefield, his piercing eyes locked on her. "You found the file," he said simply. Maya's throat tightened. "You lied to me about everything." Edward stepped forward, calm despite the chaos raging outside. "I didn't lie. I withheld. There's a difference, and I did it to protect you." Her voice shook. "Protect me? By stalking me? By turning my life into some kind of project?" He sighed, almost weary. "Maya, people like me, we don't have the luxury of leaving things to chance. If I chose you, it had to be certain. I needed to know everything about you, whether you'd bend, whether you'd break." Tears stung her eyes. So it was never fate, never real. For the first time, Edward's voice sharpened, iron beneath velvet. "Don't confuse being tested with being unworthy. You passed when no one else could. That was real." Before Maya could answer, the windows shattered. Masked intruders stormed in, armed and merciless. Shouts filled the room. Edward grabbed her hand with surprising strength and pulled her toward a hidden panel in the wall. The bookshelf swung open, revealing a narrow passageway. "Move!" he barked. Maya stumbled after him, the file still clutched to her chest. They raced through the dark corridor as gunfire echoed behind them. Her heart hammered with each step. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but survival came first. Finally, they burst into an underground garage. Sleek black cars lined the walls. Edward shoved her into the back seat of one as his driver peeled out, tires screeching. As the safe house vanished in the rearview mirror, Maya turned to Edward. Her voice broke. "Who are they? What do they want?" Edward's jaw tightened. "They're not after me. Not anymore. They're after you." The words froze her blood. "Me? Why?" Edward looked at her then, his expression unreadable. "Because you're not just inheriting my wealth, Maya. You're inheriting my enemies. And tonight, you just became their #1 target." The safe house Edward brought Maya to was nothing like the cafe. It was sleek, high-tech, and filled with silent guards who bowed to him as if he were a king. Maya sat at the long glass table, her hands trembling. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why not someone rich, powerful, someone who understands your world?" Edward leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Because none of them would have bought a cup of coffee for an old man without expecting anything in return. That moment proved everything I needed to know." Maya shook her head, torn between fear and anger. "You've turned my life upside and down. You've made me a target." Edward's lips curved into a grim smile. "That's because you matter now. And those who matter to me are always hunted." Just then, Clara stormed in, her face pale but defiant. "She deserves the truth, Edward, all of it." Maya froze as Clara tossed another file onto the table. Her photo, her signature, a contract. "This isn't just about inheritance," Clara said sharply. "He's chosen you as his successor to control everything, the cafe, the chain, the empire behind it. But with power like that comes enemies you can't even imagine." Maya's voice cracked. "Successor? I never asked for this." Edward's tone softened. "And that's exactly why you're worthy. The ones who don't crave power are the only ones who should hold it." The words rattled inside her. She didn't know whether to trust him or run. Days later, Maya stood once more inside the cafe where it all began. The smell of roasted beans filled the air, customers chatted, and sunlight spilled across the floor. To everyone else, it was just an ordinary morning. But Maya knew the truth. Edward had vanished into the shadows, leaving her the deed to the cafe and a single note. This place was always more than coffee. It was a test of character, and you passed. Maya's fingers trembled as she held the key. Everything inside her screamed to walk away, to go back to the simple life she knew. but deep down, she understood. This was her destiny now. Clara watched her from across the counter, her expression unreadable. Friend or foe, Maya couldn't yet decide, but she did know one thing. The kindness she had shown on that ordinary day had changed everything. The poor old man hadn't just been testing her generosity. He had rewritten her future. Maya inhaled deeply, then unlocked the cafe doors. A new chapter had begun. What would you do if one small act of kindness suddenly thrust you into a life of wealth, power, and danger? Would you embrace it or walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to tell me which city and country you're watching from. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more shocking true stories like this.